So some people wonder why this place is called Lover's Leap. It goes back to a legend from the 18th century. As the story goes, there were slaves in that time, and there were two lovers called Mizzy and Tunky, who are represented here. And as the story goes, their master, took a liking to the girl, and as a result hatched a plan to get rid of the boy by selling him to another estate. But they got hold of this information, so they fled, and they tried to run away, but they were chased, they were pursued. And so in a split moment decision, they decided rather than take the risk of being caught and therefore most likely separated, they would together jump off the cliff behind here, which is quite an epic decision and a testament to their love, because there is a 1,700-foot drop beyond. I wanted to mention Lover's Leap. We were there with you at the reopening the other day.
Right.
I understand that you, as Jake's Holdings, have leased it for 10 years. Man, what a location you've got there.
Yeah.
There was a DJ there that night from Mellow FM who called it the most romantic place on earth. And what are your plans with Lover's Leap?
Lover's Leap is a property that I've always been interested in, and we were pursuing it with the government because we just thought that it should be so much more. It was not being taken care of. It wasn't a priority to either government, and we pursued it, and we finally secured a 10-year lease, and we partnered with Red Stripe to put in a bar. We put in a restaurant. We created a huge veranda with a shade and a whole new entrance and branding and marketing, and we retrained the staff, and we started just kind of like giving it some life, and we realized that there was just so much goodwill out there, not only for Lover's Leap but also for Jake's, and that was very humbling for me.
How lovely to find that out. Yeah.
And people wanted to see it succeed, and it meant a lot to people because of the history of it. You learn about Lover's Leap in primary school.
Do you?
Yeah, when you're learning about history and the heritage of the country. They have a saying in Jamaica: the higher the monkey climbs, the more he's exposed.
Are you the monkey?
I suppose in this case, because it comes with a big responsibility,
Of course it does, yeah.
But one that I welcome, and I pride myself on being a social entrepreneur. And the truth of the matter is, we have no idea how much, if we'll ever make our money back from Lover's Leap, but it was something important to do. I felt like, we just needed to do it. And quite frankly, it was advertised in the newspaper, and no one else wanted it,
Is that right?
Yeah. And it took us 8 years to secure that lease. So it also taught me as an entrepreneur the importance of perseverance.
Yes.
If you want something in life, you just have to just keep going at it. Just keep chipping away.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the traits that I'm blessed with having, that I really give thanks for.
Okay, so today we have the pleasure of being here with Senator Aubin Hill. He is Deputy President of the Senate, Advisor to the Minister of Finance, and CEO of the Prime Minister's Economic Growth Council. Thank you, Aubin, so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us.
I'm so very pleased, Jackie, that you and your team, who've been all over the world, have been spending time in southern Jamaica, southeast St. Elizabeth in particular, and welcome to our home.
Thank you very much. This house of yours is a short walk from Lover's Leap, is that right?
Indeed.
Is that a place that's close to your heart?
I grew up loving Lover's Leap, and in fact that's where I met you and Keith and your team.
That's right.
Because Jason Hensel just took over Lover's Leap to manage it. And Lover's Leap is beautiful, has always been beautiful.
Yeah.
It has never had, again, it had the problem that Jamaica had, poor management. And I believe with Jason taking it over, Jason has a good track record. He is innovative, he is enterprising, he is pushy in a wonderful way, in that he wants his own things done, and it's an admirable quality he has, and he gets things done, and I believe that's really wonderful for Lovers Leap. And yes, guests who have stayed here at our house are friends. I have had them walk with me to Lovers Leap. One of my friends who did that was the head of Jamaica Brothers Group, which is the largest agricultural business in the Caribbean.
Right.
And it's a big chicken broiler business. And Robbie Levy and myself walked to Lovers Leap, and we had a great time. And it's a beautiful, beautiful. People who've done it. I've had diplomats who come here. They love it. Or we walk up to Monroe College where I went, or both. And so this is ideally suited and 20 minutes away from Jason's, Jake's, and his wonderful establishments at Treasure Beach, right on the beach.
And going back to Lovers Leap, you gave a wonderful speech that evening. Would you be able to just succinctly summarize more or less what you said, because we have that footage, but it was very windy, and we want to make sure we get it.
Well, I was just pleased that the big thing that Lovers Leap lacked was management.
Yes.
And that Jason and his family will bring good management, because that's his pedigree.
Yeah.
He builds his business on good management.
And he's proved himself.
He's proved himself in a variety of kind of businesses. Breads with the sports club that is put up at community sports, cricket. There was tennis courts. The two Williams sisters have been down there. I've seen them down there. And his Jake's and the fishing and the pizza and whatever else, and the music that he has. So I'm glad to see that the management is in the hands of somebody who knows how to do it well.
And presumably Lovers Leap will be one of the things that contributes to economic growth.
Well, that's part of why I was happy to come and speak, because even when my guests come here, recently I had a diplomat and his whole family, and a high commissioner and his whole family, we took them to Lovers Leap, and they were amazed, just because when you go to that shelf, that veranda, and you look out, and it takes your breath away.
It does take your breath away.
It just is amazing.
Everyone I've spoken to who's been there, and I've experienced it myself, it's just you hold your breath, and you just take in this vast, phenomenal view.
What pleases me as well is Jason has a history of working very closely with the communities. He will buy what they grow. He will employ the people who live in the area. And when he entertains, he mixes with them like you wouldn't believe. So he has a great community spirit. And I think that's very good for the Lovers Leap, Yardley Chase, Southfield communities which surround the Lovers Leap area.
Absolutely. So I was going to get on to sustainability. It seems to me that sustainability works. It's a no-brainer. It's the way forward. And here I see it working better than in most places. Having travelled a lot, I often see there's one good project going on here and another different one, like education or solar.
Right.
But here you have it all happening.
We do, and we've been fortunate. Above Treasure Beach is the Santa Cruz Mountains, and a wind study was done that was showing that windmills would be very effective up there. And there was a company that came in and invested $80 million in putting up 16 mega wind turbines.
That's amazing.
And it was a fund, an alternative energy fund in America that did it. And right before it opened, Richard Branson actually came in and bought the majority shares.
The last minute, perfect.
The last minute, And Richard Branson is someone that as an entrepreneur, I take note of. He's pretty hard to ignore.
Richard Branson, if you're watching, take note. This guy's right behind you. He's coming. He's a crazy dynamo entrepreneur himself.
Yeah. So you have to kind of rate Branson for being such a. He's a visionary, and he takes risks, and he jumps off the bridge, constantly in his life, and just takes new risks, and he's failed at quite a lot of them, and he speaks openly about that.
Yeah, and he's not scared to try crazy things others wouldn't think of doing, like going into space or trying to make travel more sustainable. He's very into the green energy thing.
Sure. So in life I look to mentors. I work for a guy called Tony Hart, who is very focused on the development of Montego Bay. or a guy called John Yingling who developed Provincetown in Cape Cod. And I realized that, I really wanted to focus all of my energy on how to make Treasure Beach just that model of sustainable development.
So that was in your mind. That was a conscious
Absolutely.
thing from early on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That makes so much sense because it can't just get this good by accident. It has to have had some kind of vision behind it.
From when we were small, I started Breads and we were doing tiny projects.
Right.
And as we grew, our network grew, I suppose our influence grew, we became more trusted, and we were just responsible in the things that we did and things that we didn't do,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's
right, of
important.
course. Like
And
selling off land.
absolutely. And, I remember the Member of Parliament calling me one day and saying, I want you to be on the Town and Country Planning Authority because you keep talking about low density, but talking isn't good enough. You need to get in the trenches.
Yeah.
And I went onto that board, and quite frankly, the people on the board were terrified that if they were to lower the density, that landowners would sue them. And it was a legitimate concern.
Why? I don't understand.
Because if a developer bought a piece of land knowing he could build 30 rooms an acre, and then all of a sudden the law has changed to 15.
Oh, okay, I've got it, yeah.
And I said to them, I will take this risk. If you change it now, there's no one who owns land now who's thinking that way. However,
Yes.
if we wait,
Yes.
then you're going to be right and I'm going to be wrong.
Right.
So if we do it now, and I was like, let's have that faith, hold my hand and let's just take that risk. And it was done. It took a long time. And I think the message is out there that, we don't want large-scale development. We don't want all-inclusive hotels. We're the home of community tourism, and we embrace that and love that. That's our identity. And that we want to become this model within the breadbasket of Jamaica so that, all of those sustainability dots just connect back to, from a little kid learning how to swim
Yes.
to Richard Branson buying, an $80 million wind farm,
Yeah.
and all of those dots in between.
It's all connected. I'm very passionate about renewable energy, solar, wind, fresh sources of water. I know that you yourself are doing that here because
Right.
you showed me. And I've seen in this region there are wind turbines very visible on the top of the hills. There's solar panels. They seem to be very conscious of that here.
The car that has just driven up into our yard,
Yeah.
that's the country manager of BMR in Jamaica. Okay. BMR is the company that has put up those, I think, 23 windmills up by Monroe College. After this interview, I'm going up there to discuss how, what has happened there and how that can be expanded and certain help that they might need from the government.
I heard that in the last minute, the 11th hour, Richard Branson gave money towards that. Is that true?
She's out there. You can ask her. I can't.
Okay,
I can't answer that.
Well, Jason told us.
Yeah,
that.
well, Jason would know.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure because she did mention in one of the conversations I had that there was some relationship with Richard Branson, but I don't know what it is.
Okay.
And quite possibly because he's committed to it. Renewable water, renewable energy. I would love to see the government put in a policy that says if you build anything over larger than 4 square feet, 2 square meters, whatever it is, you should be required to put on 2 renewables. Renewable water and renewable energy.
That would be amazing.
And so when you do that, you would change the landscape of this country tremendously.
And quickly.
Because we have, how you measure the potency of solar energy is by something called the global horizontal irradiance. In Jamaica, we have 2.5, almost 3 times the GHI of Germany. And Germany has, I don't know, 10 days of sunlight in August, if you're lucky. So I don't know where, but until very recently, before China took over a couple of years ago, they were the leading implementer of solar energy in the
Germany
world.
was,
Germany
really?
was.
So they had the vision and the insight, but not the right weather.
They have
need
the
to
right- the
tow
right weather.
themselves south a bit.
No, we have the right weather
Right.
and lack the vision and the commitment and
Okay.
sometimes the money, but it's the
Okay.
policy.
Yes.
Because, in my view, because we've had a very dominant utility, almost monopoly in terms of providing power, but certainly a monopoly in owning the grid,
Right.
and you have to put your extra energy on the grid. That has slowed us down, and so we need to look at the policy that takes the Jamaican economy, puts the Jamaican economy forefront instead of just the profitability of a very important utility. We need to have that,
Yes.
but they're not mutually exclusive. To have good policy,
Yeah.
looking after our environment and looking after our balance of payment, because every time we buy heavy oil, it costs us money, or jet fuel, whatever we buy. And if we can produce our own energy and renewable energy through wind and solar, and I must declare, my son runs a solar company.
I looked at it. I looked at
You
the
went to his website.
Iris Solar.
Solar, yes. And so I declare that. So for years, I'm committed
Yes.
to renewable energy and certainly solar and wind.
It seems to me, I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking, it seems like a no-brainer to go to renewables because we have this abundant source of light that's
Especially
that's
around
there.
here.
In certain regions of the
that's
world,
right, that's right.
it's you know there very often, and to be used as a source
Right.
of energy, along with wind and water. So that if you can find a cost-effective way of doing it that's good for the environment and good for the people, it seems.
And with Tesla coming in with batteries that are cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, that provide storage, it's very good. I'm sure Tesla is looking at finding ways to make sure that when we have to dispose of those batteries, because I know he's environmentally conscious.
He is, yes.
He is.
Yeah. I feel like there's a growing consciousness in the world about things like that, like just being more aware about what toxins are around us, what chemicals are in our food, what chemicals are we putting on our skin.
Right.
And it's the same whether it's food or whether it's a herb, a plant. I think we're learning, we're growing.
Well, the world is spinning and it's going back to where it was,
Right,
to nature.
back to basics, back
right?
to nature.
Because, again, if you look at environmental changes, climate change and the detriment that it is having, global warming, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you look at all of these things and you question, because industrialization, it might have done some good to us, but comparing it with the detriment, what do you want?
So what's your vision for the future? What's your ideal future?
A more natural environment, a more natural world where you do what you have to do, in the sense that, well, and I give thanks that natural gas is coming about, because we have energy from the sun,
Renewable energy.
right? We have hydroelectric, we have wind energy. So there are, I see the future applying the scientific knowledge that people have all over the world now. I see the world becoming a healthier place to live in, as long as you apply the knowledge. Because people can still know and they don't do.
Yeah, that's very
right?
common.
Yeah, and a lot of that has been happening. So if the world and the world leaders were to ensure that the application of scientific knowledge to everyday way of life is being applied, I think that we'll have a better world. We'll have a healthier world. I think there will be less war, because you ask the question, why is there so much war, I think European colonialism and imperialism had a lot to do with it. People who now want to reclaim their culture, want to reclaim their land. So again, each of us have a role to play in trying to ensure that the type of environment, the type of world, equality, the justice that we want to see. Because we all want peace, but can there be peace without justice? I doubt it, I don't think so, And it reminds me now of Peter Tosh, who always sing that he doesn't want no peace, he wants equal rights and justice. And that is what we are all calling for. And I think if there's more justice in the world, then we would have a better world. But as long as injustice, brutality, continue, people will always react. Just like in Madison, until the philosophy that holds one way superior, another inferior, is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, until there is no more first class and second class citizens of any nation, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes, until bigotry, maliciousness, and inhuman self-interest is replaced with goodwill and overstanding, then the dream of true lasting peace, world citizenship, and the rule of international morality will become a fleeting illusion to be pursued, but never attained. There will be war. So if we really want peace, every one of us has to look into ourselves, into the depths of what some people call the soul, and see what is the type of contribution that we can make toward making this place a better and safer world.
There's two things you've mentioned, an irrigation project and also a recycling project, which are both coming up.
Yes.
Can you talk about them?
So the Tourism Enhancement Fund and the Recycling Partners of Jamaica selected Treasure Beach as the first kind of resort area to start a recycling program. And that's something that, we've taken very seriously. And, we'd really like to see, street lights in Treasure Beach, which are renewable energy, and just using the sun and the environment. And when you see garbage on the road, it's just like, it sends a message like, you don't respect each other, or you don't respect the visitor or yourself. So the recycling project was very important for us. How to take something that was ugly and used and to turn it back into something useful again. So that was really, really important. And the irrigation, again, for the sustainability of the farmers is a very important and critical role.
Sure.
So we've been, meeting with various development banks about funding to dig more like deep wells and how to provide affordable and dependable irrigation for the farmers in this area.
Freshwater sources.
Yeah. Working with the parish council for guttering of buildings, possibly desalination, because it wasn't projected that Treasure Beach would have had this growth. So you can have.
I didn't know you were coming.
All right. So you have weeks where you could only get water 3 days a week or 4 days a week, and then you're kind of torn with this kind of decision of, well, is it more important for the foreigner to have water who's coming and spending hard currency, or for the farmer who's trying to send his kids to school?
How can you possibly decide that?
Right.
Yeah.
How can you win in that decision, right? So it's just looking at ways and lobbying for, like the Planning Institute of Jamaica, to see that, Jamaica imports $900 million worth of food every year. So, if you were to spend $25 million on irrigation for farmers in this farming belt, how much would that reduce that import bill by?
Yes.
And over what period of time would you make back that investment? Both on a social and economic kind of level. So, it's funny. Maybe I am going back to banking in a strange type of way, but through community development and thinking of how are you a responsible citizen and trying to approach your government with different projects and how best to spend the money that's going to have the most impact.
Yes. Humanity saw images of Earth from space.
Right.
It's like there was a shift, I hope that we're realizing more and more that she is a living, breathing entity, as some people say, like James Lovelock, the scientist with the Gaia theory. Just if we could think of the Earth more as alive,
Absolutely.
and everything interconnected, and how what we do impacts her and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Everything would be working more fluidly
Absolutely.
and sustainably.
So one of the sources that we've been looking at for irrigation for the farmers is taking water from the Black River.
Right.
Because it's the largest river in Jamaica. it's flowing directly into the sea. You know, so how could you use, say, alternative energy to harness that water to bring it over to the farmers in this?
Right.
But then, you know, at what cost? What environmental impact is that going to have? So
right,
you know,
you always got to think of
so
the
every
domino effect.
right. So everything is connected, and thus finding that balance in between nature and development.
Absolutely.
And maybe one of my favorite brands in the world is Patagonia,
Yes.
just because of, you know, how it evolved and how the founders thought about their product long term, and how they were able to leverage their brand into protecting hundreds of thousands of acres of wetlands and protected areas. And, you know, I kind of see ourselves maybe as a tiny Patagonia, you know, and, you know, below Lover's Leap is 425 acres of forest. You know, we have the Galleon Beach Fishing Sanctuary. We're going to go after this land in Parity, to tie it to Pelican Bar. So as much of the protected lands that you can, you know, show the importance of that to kids and adults and visitors, and then
Yeah.
just the respect for the environment will just increase
Yeah.
over time.
It's not so much about just taking from the land, but being a guardian of the land. So another big part of Jamaica is cannabis.
Yeah.
The growing of cannabis and the smoking of cannabis. To my knowledge, it's now decriminalized on
Correct.
its way to being legalized. Is that
Correct.
right?
Medical
cannabis.
yes.
Okay. Are you at all involved in this process?
I'm very involved. When the legislation first started to change, a lot of the farmers came to me and, you know, wanted to know how it would affect them.
Right.
I'm
The
ch-
ganja farmers.
the ganja farmers, and I'm the chairman of a high school where a lot of the boys leave to plant ganja. And, you know, in my mind, there was an opportunity to turn that kid into, you know, from a criminal into an entrepreneur. So I saw it as a big opportunity. And, you know, growing up in Jamaica is just, ganja is part of the social fabric, you know,
just a normal thing.
especially maybe in my case, my parents were artists, and people that would come around them, and, you know, creative types.
Yeah.
So when these farmers came to me for advice, I said, you know what, I'm going to call the Minister of Justice, who I happen to know very well, and said, you know, Mark, would you come down and speak to these farmers? And he was so happy for the invitation.
Great.
He wanted to get to the grassroots
Great.
farmer. And he arrived in a helicopter with a police car, and all of the Rastas were like, you know. And what was funny about that meeting, because I promoted it quite widely with flyers and a town crier, kind of like calling all ganja farmers, you know. And what was funny is that a lot of visitors, a lot of foreigners showed up to the meeting.
Oh wow.
And we had no idea that amount of goodwill was out there for the Jamaican farmer, right? People have been coming to Jamaica since the inception of tourism to come and have to smoke, right? And there was this incredible presentation by Mark Golding, who drove the legislation. And, you know, when he just went into the background and kind of apologized for how Rastas were persecuted, and not just Rastas, but any Jamaican who may have lost the opportunity to travel just because they had one spliff, or
Right.
and basically, you know, explained how we could only go to medical marijuana at this time, and how we had to decriminalize. Then the farmers really appreciated where he was coming from and the kind of process that it was going to take. And that, you know, months later, Minister Golding asked me if I would sit on the Cannabis Licensing Authority, where I was lucky to meet people like Ras Ayavi, who, you know, has been locked up several times during his life, but he fought for his constitutional rights. And I've been privileged to sit among people from different ministries who were maybe much more conservative, but understood that the ground was shifting around, you know, the importance and the difference that that medical cannabis can make. You know, whether it's seizures or glaucoma or people who can't sleep properly,
Asthma, I've heard it
asthma, cancer treatment. So, you know, I was on the Cannabis Licensing Authority. We went to Colorado and Seattle, and when we went to Canada is really when I realized how Health Canada were approaching it from a health point of view, a public health point of view. Because they could prove that it was easier for a 15-year-old to get a spliff as opposed to a can of beer, right?
Right.
And when that shift took place, they were like, okay, as a society, we need to regulate this, the consumption. Because, you know, growing up in Jamaica, a ganja dealer would kind of give you it in a brown paper bag, and people didn't know what they were getting.
Right, right.
And the way I kind of thought of it is, okay, if my daughter wants to try it one day, I'd prefer her to know what she's taking, what strength she's taking, what strain she's taking, where it's from.
Right.
And it's kind of like almost the same as food safety, right? But I think Jamaica has a huge role to play in ganja, and it has that identity as being like, you know, one of those like places that identifies with it, whether it's because you're a Bob Marley lover or you saw The Harder They Come or, you know, Damian Marley, whatever. It's just like, and I think we need to create a very an industry that is respected,
Yes.
respectful of the Jamaican indigenous farmer. So one of the things that Ras IRV and I really advocated for was the fact that any license had to be majority Jamaican owned,
Right, that's good.
and that, you know, we wanted collaboration with foreigners, but that they couldn't own more than 49%. And I really believe that it's going to make have huge impact socially and economically in Jamaica. And it's not for everyone. Ganja is not for everyone, and I'm the first to say that. Some people it's great for, other people it makes them paranoid and crazy. So, you know, we have people around the table who don't agree with it, and that's fine. Everyone is having their
It's good that
say.
every
And
voice gets heard, yeah.
yeah, but if you think of it in relation to cigarettes or alcohol, I mean, you know, ganja has so many properties that are useful, and to be given that opportunity to be on the board with someone like Ras IRV as it's evolving is hugely, it's a massive privilege for me.
So I'm now here with Ras IRV, who is a Rastafarian leader of the area. He is co-chair of the Rastafarian Administrative Council. He's on the board of the Cannabis Licensing Authority. He spearheaded the first Ganja Farmer Association, and he's a long-term advocate for the legalization of cannabis. So we're going to have a chat. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you for being here.
Okay, give thanks for having me, you know. And always a joy to be talking about what we call truth and right. You know, whether it's the herb, whether it's the, humanity, whether it's the equality. But as long as it has to do with truth and right,
Yeah.
we always have pleasure talking about it.
Okay, great. Well, let's start by just talking about your origins. So where were you born? What was your background?
Well, I was born in Westmoreland, Little London area. And funny enough, I was born in a thatch hut.
Yeah?
In a hut, not any of these buildings, you know. But hut, thatch hut, and they call it wattle and dog, was the order of the day, the average, you know, descendants of enslaved people would live in those buildings, you know. So I was born in a thatch hut and plantation, Naylorfield Estate, and I grew up in that area, got a common entrance examination at the age of 11, went to Manning's High School, and then I left and did research in agricultural engineering, specializing in irrigation and drainage, being a laboratory technician also in the science physics department. But then that's where, you know.
That's your Like, so were
Basically.
you brought up in a Rastafarian family or community?
No, I was not. Because at the time, you know, growing up as a youth, Rastas were not so widespread as it is now.
Yeah.
But they were, you know, we knew of Rastafari, and as a youth going to school, you know, maybe at about 16, we were smoking herbs. So, you know, when you take a pipe, a ganja pipe to burn it, you'd always have to say something about Rastafari, give thanks to Rastafari, praise Rastafari, give thanks to something.
So that was always part of the ritual. You always give thanks first before you start
Right.
smoking.
Traditionally, historically, that is how it used to be. Different now, things are different now. you know.
Yeah.
But there was more reverence,
Yes.
more a godly approach
Yeah.
to herb in those times.
It's a
than
bit
it is
like
now.
the Native American Indians before they would kill an animal. They would thank its soul for giving its
Right,
life, that kind of
right,
thing. It's
right,
just
right.
reverence for life, right?
Right, right. You know?
Okay, so I hear you got a scholarship to school, is that
yeah,
right?
yeah. I got a scholarship at the age of 11 and went to Manning High School, which is the second oldest educational institution in the island. But being at a high school in Manning in my days as a youth was what people would consider prestigious, you know.
Right.
So having and being exposed to the educational system there, it put I in a position that I could do my own research, I could go into the thing, read about the thing that I wanted to. And as a grassroots youth coming up, grassroots people were always confronted with the law. The police would come into the community, and as a youth I would always be defending the youths them and other people in the community, you know.
So in a way it gave you a voice to speak
Yes,
for your people,
yes,
the Rastafarians.
Right. And I decided from a young age that I was going to have a voice. You know,
Good,
that
right.
I was not going to sit down
Right.
and watch certain things happen and don't do anything
So
about
you're
it.
not going to be apathetic and just
No,
let
no,
things
no.
flow, you're going to talk.
Right.
How do you feel, in your opinion, Rastafarians have been treated in this country over the years?
Over the years, there's no doubt and no question that Rastafari rights have been violated, they have been brutalized, they have been harassed. And ganja is always the avenue that has been used, because we're not criminals, we're not rapists, you know. But ganja has always been the avenue, the door through which the state would walk to harass and to brutalize Rastafarians over the years. You know?
So whoever you are, like however good or bad someone is, they would just judge you by the fact that you smoke ganja.
Right.
Nothing,
You know,
the rest
and,
is irrelevant.
The fact that, you know, when Rasta rose up, it was direct colonial days, and to see an entity coming up and to be totally against this European colonialism, people didn't like that, you know. And such, we were seen as a threat to what would be considered the Euro-colonial standards and way of doing things, and, you know, the whole religion thing, you know, and so on. So,
Sure.
you know, growing up, we were given pictures of Christ looking white, angels white, and the devil black. So
And you didn't relate, you didn't think,
no.
it didn't speak
Those
to you.
things left a lot of inferiority complex in the mind of some of the people,
Sure.
and a lot of questions in the minds of others, you know.
Sure.
So as youth coming up, you know, give thanks that I had the ability to do my research in whatever field or on whatever subject matter I wanted to.
Great.
And, you know.
So to you, what is cannabis?
Well, when the first place, cannabis is a plant. Like, to me, like any other plant. You know what I mean? It's just that each plant has its own purpose. Just like, I mean, if you're thirsty, you wouldn't go and eat a ripe banana. You would go and get some water and
Sure.
drink, you know what I mean? And so as such, I see cannabis just like another plant. But the way in which we grew up and the way in which the plant was stigmatized and demonized, and especially me now doing my own research into the history of cannabis, especially from a medical or a cultural point of view, and finding out the medical benefits and how people used to use it, and me at myself using it from I was a youth at about 7, and using it. Then one thing I noticed with cannabis, it tends to make a thing godly.
Yeah.
Yeah, very godly, you know. And as such, so as a plant now,
So you see it as sacred, sort of. It's like a
Yes.
connection to the sacred.
right, you know, at
Something.
least, you know, when you use herb, and most people who fight against herb are people who don't use herb. Those who use herb realize the spiritual and the medicinal benefits.
Right.
So looking at it strictly from a spiritual point of view at the moment, because that is how Rastafari comes spiritual. So we look at the plant and you know, we use it because we get this meditation. When you use herb, it tends to put you in a different frame of mind where you want to ask questions that maybe has never been asked.
Yeah.
You want to dig deep in yourself, you want to know about who you are as a person, who you are in relationship to what we have been taught about as God, and who is God. So you start to ask yourself a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And that is how I see the plant as, you know, a source of inspiration
Right.
to I man, and from other people who I see use it, and what I read about it, it's obviously that this plant has a place in history, not just as a plant, but having, you know, spiritual or spirituality attached to it, medicinal value attached to it. So the plant to me is a very great plant.
Okay,
Right.
thanks for that. So, what would you say to those who claim that, you know, ganja is dangerous, it's bad for you, it makes you lose your memory, it's a gateway to harder drugs, all of these various accusations against it?
Well, put it this way. I mean, I have been using herb when I was a youth. I have seen people using herb. There are a lot of people in our community using herb. And we have been told, yes, that it makes you crazy. And just like I say, it's a gateway to harder drugs. But funny enough, growing up, there was one person in my community who you'd call a madman or insane person. And this man started to use herb, and eventually became a businessman. Right? So I mean, I have never seen where, I'm not saying it has never happened, but I'm saying I have never seen where it had ever, I mean, herb has caused anybody to be crazy. And I grew up in a grassroots community where ganja has always been a part of our people's way of life. People will smoke it and they get, I mean, maybe you say you get too high or what, but then people will just mix something sweet and give it to you and you drink it and that's it. One thing I would never say to anybody to do is to cook herb, ganja, cannabis and eat it.
Right.
You need to know what quantity you're going to cook. You need to know what is the potency of what is it that you're going to cook. So what is needed about herb is really education.
Right.
In terms of it being a, you know, all these, you know, bad things about it. The system in itself, to me, I consider it very hypocritical. I've been researching what they call drugs. I've been looking into a lot of, you know, world history, politics, and so on. And when you look at something like cigarette, that the WHO put out
The World Health
report,
Organization.
right.
Yeah.
in 1993, somewhere around that, showing that cigarette by the year 2000, cigarette will be responsible for over 500 million deaths.
That's
Over
quite a figure.
500 million deaths. Yet cigarette is legal,
Yes.
right? The mark and warning, cigarette smoking is dangerous, yet it is out there. Alcohol can kill you directly, yet it is out there. The amount of road accidents caused from alcohol drinking, the amount of broken homes, but it is out there,
Yeah.
right? Other drugs are other things, products that they have to pull from the shelf because they find out that you know, it is doing some harm, some side effects to people that is too much. So with all of these things taken into consideration and looking at the history, especially in the US where ganja cannabis is concerned, I know that herb was used to treat more than 100 different illnesses in the US. It wasn't until in the 30s when the pharmaceutical companies started to come, you know, to develop. And then what was known as the FBN, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which is now the DEA. They were paid by the pharmaceutical company. There was the head of it was Harry Anslinger, right? And he was paid. He was the person that was paid to propagandize, you know, bad things about cannabis. So we know that from a pharmaceutical, from a monetary point of view, is in the best interest of pharmaceutical companies that if herb is made illegal, right? I mean, they have themselves would make products out of it and sell it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, we wouldn't have access to it as a natural plant. So, you know, with all of this, and plus what is happening now, where research in medicinal cannabis is concerned, where the impact on glaucoma, epilepsy, Crohn's disease, different type of cancer, it's obvious that there's a lot of hypocrisy, and that it's not a matter that ganja is really dangerous for us, but it's because, you know, the system wants to keep people ignorant and to keep it in a way that you will always have to go to them for medicine.
Right.
When you can create your own medicine, not just from ganja as a plant, but from other herbs, you know.
So can you talk a bit about the medicinal benefits of marijuana, ganja?
Well, like I said, I've done research, and as far back as 2500 BC, the Chinese were writing about cannabis in their Chinese encyclopedia. But from what I have done is that, one, like I said, it's used to treat more than 100 different illnesses. And when you talk about menstruation, when you talk about blindness, when you talk about, like I said, epilepsy, different type of cancers, I mean, from both lung cancer, cervical cancer, prostate cancer, products are now being created out of marijuana to treat all of these things. So it's not a matter that the system doesn't know the benefit, the medicinal benefit of herb, because it is there. A lot of clinical trials, you know, have been done where cannabis is concerned.
I heard Israel's done a lot of research.
Israel is the leading country where research in medical cannabis is concerned. And I was at the United Nations 2016 at UNGAS United Nations General Assembly Special Session. And the Israeli representative pointed out that they were manufacturing a lot of products. And a lot of countries already are asking Israel to export these products to their country.
Is that right?
I was in Israel just last year, 2017. And what I saw is that I was talking to a mentally ill person. And he told me that what they use in Israel to treat mental illness was cannabis. And he had to get his 7 spliffs per day because that keeps him calm. So, I mean, when it comes to mental health and the other, you know, medical issues, it is proven that herb, ganja, cannabis is good at treating, you know, all of these different illnesses. So the history is there. And I'll tell you this, that in the late 19th century, there was this doctor named O'Shaughnessy. He was a British doctor too, so you can research it.
Okay.
And he, at that time, England was a direct colony to England, just like all the rest of the Caribbean is. And when he went to India, he found documents that on cannabis that was more than 1,000 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and he brought it to England. And so come cannabis was introduced into the British medical system and eventually into the European medical system. So there's all this history of how cannabis has been used medically for years upon years, not just in India or in Africa, but in Europe itself,
Right.
and in the US, you know.
So in your opinion, is there a lot of miseducation, misunderstanding around cannabis?
There is a lot of this miseducation, and the miseducation is not accidental, it's deliberate, because that is how you keep people ignorant and keep them fearful too. Because here it is, the impression you are giving people about a plant is that it will mad you, it will make you crazy, it will kill you, right? But the
Which is a very fearful thing to hear. You
Yes.
know, that's scary.
But we've been given a Bible that tells us that the herb is for the healing of the nation, right? And scientifically now it is being proven that all what we have been taught in terms of how we grew up eating, the amount of salt, the amount of sugar, the amount of white flour, the amount of rice and meat and these things are, are not good for us. But yet these are the things that have been given to us, right? So there's no question that the miseducation has been, deliberate, because if you want to, there's a brother named Steve Biko. You might have heard
yes,
about
of
him.
course.
Right, from
Peter
South
Gabriel
Africa.
sang about him.
And he said, the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed.
Yeah.
The greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressed, in the hands of the oppressor, is the mind of the oppressed. There's a next saying out of Kemet, which is ancient Egypt: teach a man how to think, and you don't have to be concerned about his action, because he'll never be able to do otherwise than which he has been taught.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a mind control now, in the sense that the system is trying to control us mentally, and we can still contribute to their economic development, because at the end of the day, slavery was about economic development. Pharmaceutical establishment is about economic development. Basically, everything that a country does, it has its own good things, but it's geared to, every business that is set up is geared towards making money. So the whole miseducation was geared towards, keeping people in ignorance so that you can continue to live off them economically.
Okay.
That's about it.
Okay.
To me,
So now specifically Jamaica, I know that previously farmers have been growing ganja illegally, and now it's been decriminalized.
Yes, it's been decriminalized.
But many people have been arrested. I believe even you were arrested yourself at some point.
Yes, I have been arrested more than one time.
And how do you deal with that? How do you react?
Well, in the first place, I've never gone into a court talking about whether I am guilty or not guilty of having ganja. I've always been confrontational in the sense that I've always seen I as Rastafari having the right to freedom of expression according to the Constitution, both from a Jamaican constitutional point of view and from a United Nations constitutional point of view, that each individual, irrespective of color, creed, or race, has freedom of expression, freedom of belief, whether it be religious, political, or so on. So, going into being locked up for Herb, I was bent on defending my constitutional rights as a Rastaman. So, it would be always from a constitutional point of view that I was defending myself, in the sense that whether as a Rastaman, if I had the right to have a plant as my sacrament, similar to how the church would use bread and wine as their sacrament. So, that is the level that I used to deal with it from.
So
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. So, from your perspective, like if the Christians are left alone and in peace to use wine as a sacrament, you should also be left alone to use ganja, a herb, as your connection to the sacred.
Right.
But
in terms of the question about our farmers, ganja has contributed a lot to the economy of Jamaica, a lot. And a lot of these youths leaving schools, there are no opportunity for them. There are no jobs, right? And even right here in St. Elizabeth, a lot of the youths turn to ganja farming rather than turn to robbery. As you know, St. Elizabeth is the breadbasket.
yes, yeah.
It's a farming parish, maybe more than any other parish. Where come to food crop. You have crops like sugarcane in other parishes, but in terms of food, providing food for the nation, St. Elizabeth. Right? So the youth can come up being farmers. But at the same time, here is a plan that can contribute much more significantly, economically, than a pound of cabbage. If you take a pound of cabbage in comparison to a pound of ganja, you get a lot more for a pound of ganja than a pound of cabbage. You know what I mean? So it encourages youth to go into ganja production.
And is it them, the farmers, that make some of that money?
Yes, the farmers do make some of that money.
Okay.
But at the same time, you have other people, as business people, who will come and buy from the farmer and either go back to Kingston or go back to Montego Bay or wherever and sell back to the community, or people will smuggle it out but there's no question that ganja has been contributing to the economy of Jamaica.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So,
And, yeah.
am I right in thinking this current situation is it's decriminalized and it's on its way to being legalized?
It is being decriminalized, right? Meaning you are entitled, each individual is entitled to have 2 ounces or less on his or her person. But out in the public, you can be charged for it, right? And it leaves question now as to what the term decriminalized really means.
Right.
Whether it's just that you might not get a criminal record for it, but you can still be charged. This does not go for the Rastaman, and this is something that needs to be cleared up too.
Okay.
Because a lot of people think that, oh, you can have 2 ounces of herb in the public. No. If you are held with, only that there are no tickets that being provided at the moment. But the situation is that it is a ticketable offense to have 2 ounces or less. Right?
Okay.
Like I said, this does not go for Rastafari, because Rastafari have sacramental rights.
Okay.
They have the right now since the amendment to the laws in 2015 that we have the right to have herb in our position, whether
Okay,
in
I
public.
didn't know that.
Right. Also, where the decriminalization program is concerned, each household is entitled to grow 5 ganja plants legally. Each household. So if, for example, in a yard, because you have some yard that they call tenement yard, and there are 5 households, those 5 households are entitled to plant 25 ganja plants.
Sure.
Right. But that's the situation with it. Where the legalization of it is concerned now is that it is legalized within what you call a regulated framework, right? And what is known as the CLA, the Cannabis Licensing Authority, has been established from as a government agency to monitor and regulate the industry. If you go on the CLA website, which is cla.org.jm, you can see how you go about. But there's an application form. People going to get license to grow. You have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 to dispense, to manufacture, to do R&D, research and development,
Right.
and to transport.
So people are starting to work with the farmers and collaborate so that.
Well, yes, right? But as for me now, as a community person,
Yeah.
and other Rastaman who know that grassroots people in Rastafari have suffered more than anybody for ganja, I would like to see a program where it is guaranteed that those who have suffered, those who have gone to prison and gotten the button licks and so on, can benefit significantly out of this industry.
Can you tell me a bit about the AD program, the Alternative Development Program, that had some success in Bolivia and Colombia?
Yes, this is a program, this is a United Nations program sponsored by European Union. And like in time gone, in South American countries, Colombia, Bolivia and so on, when they were trying to get people to come out of what was called the illegal system, because they were planting coca plant and ganja plant. So they were trying to replace those plants now with some vegetable production. After a time, because there was a legal market both for cannabis and for coke, so they brought it back into the country and into the community. And because there was now a legal medical market, so people would be able to grow both coca plant and ganja. So the fact that people like Jason and I are on the board, Jason Hensel, who, he's on the board, I am on the board, he grew up in St. Elizabeth, surrounded by ganja farmers and other farmers, and realizing the benefit that it had brought to the community. We want to ensure as much as possible that the industry benefits the people. So yes, there are people coming on board, there are companies coming and getting licensed, but to the extent that they want to work with the farmers in a way that the farmers benefit significantly and is not just being given a crumbs,
Yeah.
I don't know how willing they are,
Okay.
right? But, you know, like I say, I and Jason, and we are trying to lobby the government and the board to ensure that as much as possible that our people can benefit. So the program is now being brought to Jamaica with 2 pilot projects, one in Westmont and one in St. Elizabeth. And we're hoping now that there are companies, from what we've been told, that will be willing to come to Jamaica and buy these cannabis that will be provided through the EAD program so that the farmers, but it is a program geared specifically toward traditional ganja farmers. So the big rich people will not be able to get into unless they're going to walk through some loophole. That,
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
But it's specifically designed to benefit traditional and you know ganja farmers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. One of the things that you learn when you go to Jamaica, you hear a little bit about the history and what's going on here, is that it appears that it's a time where cannabis is verging on being legalized.
Right.
Here. Do you have any thoughts on that, or about how it could best be implemented?
Well, I'll answer the best being implemented.
Okay.
Last year about this time, Prime Minister Holness took a delegation, and I was included in it, to Israel.
Right.
We had the privilege of going to the institute in Israel that deals with medicinal cannabis,
Right.
which is quite different from medical or certain recreational cannabis.
Sure. That must
And
be
it's
interesting.
amazing what they've been. But sitting in that meeting about a week before, one of the key players in that institute was just in Jamaica at UTEC.
Oh,
They've been
really?
all over the place, all over Jamaica. They know all about this, and I'd love to see that medicinal marijuana being developed in Jamaica so that it becomes a medicine that can be approved, and the recreational stuff that causes some governments to be apprehensive
Cautious,
about it
yes.
and cautious.
Yeah.
Other people can deal with that,
Right,
but we
right.
should really get into medicinal marijuana
Yeah.
because we have we have a good name for that product.
You're known for it.
And we're known for it, and we should not allow just everybody else to benefit from it. And usually the ones who benefit are from, very well-established economies. So
Right.
we need to make sure we build
see what you
build partnerships with Canada, with Israel, with Australia.
And I guess maybe, I don't know how much research there has been as to the medicinal side of it, but maybe to increase the research.
A great deal of research has been done by a man called Dr. Lowe from
Okay.
Eden Gardens, and he is very much interested in it. There are others who have come in who are, there are other Jamaicans who have, but I think Dr. Lowe is a lead, because he's a scientist. He's a leading explorer of that topic
Okay.
and the business itself. And then others have come in from Canada, I know from Australia, to look at our marijuana to see how it can be medicinally or recreationally used, where it can be used within the law.
Let's talk a little about The Harder They Come. Your father, Perry Hensel, created this film, which, if I'm right, was the first successful Jamaican film that went international and kind of introduced the world to reggae music.
Right,
Is that
right,
correct?
absolutely.
Okay, so what was that?
Yeah. Yeah, so, there's so many people who come to Jake's and they're like, The Harder They Come changed my life. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
And they're like, yeah. I was in college and, I didn't really identify with the punk movement or whatever movement was happening. And they just saw this movie and they wanted to come to Jamaica and understand, this country where there's this unbelievable energy and expression, was coming from, and
So because they'd seen the film, they wanted to come and
absolutely,
see the place
they
and
wanted
feel
to
it.
come and see the
And
place.
hear the music, because of course it was Jimmy Cliff who was the main character.
Absolutely. About 5 years ago, I was on a plane with Jimmy, and
Right.
when we arrived in Jamaica, someone called him Ivan. When he landed,
Right.
And I looked at him because we were walking and talking. And then the second person and the third one, after 5 people call him Ivan.
Is that the character?
I was like, yes. I was like, Jimmy, how come everyone calls you Ivan? And he's like, yeah, most people in Jamaica call me Ivan. I'm like, but the movie was made 45 years ago. He was like, no, they call me Ivan.
Clearly
And then
having
I thought
impact.
about it and I was like, oh my God, Carl Bradshaw is still called Jose. And, you know, the movie really had a huge impact on
Were you around on set when your father was making it?
I was 3 years old.
Oh, you were very young. Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't
so,
realise,
you know, but I went to the, I went to so many, you know, screenings where he was honored, and I'm just like incredibly influenced and like just in awe of what my father did and how he kind of was just took that Jamaican culture in its raw, authentic form and packaged it in a way that made us people want to come to Jamaica and understand reggae and understand, you know, what this country is all about. And I think I'm building on a lot of the foundation that he left behind, you know,
Right,
because
right.
you know, you can just see the swagger of a Jamaican, you know. A Jamaican is a bossy kind of guy and a very kind of, you know, they're kind of larger than life. And they're
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of
you know,
pride.
I'm Jamaican.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's awesome. I think that's great. You know, they don't play small, right?
That's
They
great.
they
and true.
talk up and they're like, no man, I'm Jamaican. I'm a
Yeah.
force.
It's true.
And,
They've got this spirit.
They have this spirit. That's this
Yeah.
formidable spirit that
Yes.
is just like kind of unstoppable. And
And so when did he get, or how did he get the idea for The Harder They Come?
There was a criminal in Jamaica called Rygin. That was our hero. You know, he became
Like-
the first of those Butch Cassidy. You know,
Right,
Somebody-
the cool rebel.
the cool rebel, and he used to leave notices everywhere saying, "I was here, but I disappear."
Really? And they
Yes.
couldn't find him, sort
Yes,
of
and the country thought he was wonderful.
thing. Wow.
So Perry took that story and made him into a musician, which he wasn't.
Okay, oh, I see. Okay, that was Perry's
Yeah,
twist.
yeah.
Okay. And what was it like being involved in that whole process of getting that film made?
Okay. Well, Perry had to find a star, and that was Jimmy.
Jimmy Cliff.
Yes, and he was looking at a record jacket, and there was a picture of Jimmy on the front and the back, and they were so different that he said, "This must be my man."
Right.
And he got Jimmy back
Versatile.
from England, and you know, he was very good in the part. And I was art director, and everything, you know, props, costumes, blood, locations. That's why there are no stills of the thing. I took stills, I think, the first day, and never again. There was never any time.
Too busy.
Yes.
Wow. It must have been fun. Was it fun?
Oh,
or busy?
yes.
Crazy busy?
No, it was fun.
What is it you think is really unique about this particular area of southern Jamaica? I've been trying to put my finger on it throughout
Right.
the time we've been here. I've asked lots of people. What do you think it is about this community that is different, unique, special?
I think it's the independence of the people, the pride of the
Right.
people. I think because it's a fishing and farming community, and quite a respectful construction also industry. But because people typically work for themselves, I think that pride and that dignity just comes out. And you know, I think the treasure is the treasure in Treasure Beach is the people.
That's lovely.
And you know, I've found my treasure here by working with them and having an opportunity to make a difference, you know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely the pride and the independence of the people.
That's backed up by something that Senator Auburn Hill said to me which was that in this region of Jamaica, not only do people save more rather than get more and more loans,
Right.
but also they ask the least from the government. You know, they're not always going to the government saying, we
Right.
need this, we need
Right.
that. Obviously they need infrastructure and stuff, but they are very independent.
Right. Yes.
You have been described as public spirited, you know, a maverick, an entrepreneur, very generous, and some people we've spoken to have said you're like a father to them. That this is a community. They really do hold you in high esteem and recognise the effects you've had around here. I'm gonna make you cry again.
No, I'm not gonna cry this time.
And we feel that, you know, personally, having met you here a couple of years running, you really care, don't you?
Yeah.
You really care about this place.
I really care, and I really am. I'm a fairly spiritual person,
Yes.
and I just believe that, you know, I've been blessed. You know, I've been blessed by finding this place and being given this opportunity, and that's how things evolved over the last 25 years since my mother started Jake's. And I just believe you need to be responsible, because, you know, I saw my sister wearing a t-shirt one day and it said, in the end, all that matters is how we treated each other.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me,
Yeah.
you know, and I never forgot it. And
It's like Aldous Huxley on his deathbed. He'd spent his entire life studying the philosophy of humans.
right,
And he said, the last thing he said was, we need to be kinder to each other.
true,
So simple, so profound.
absolutely. And I do believe that Bob Marley was a huge gift to this country. But when you listen to his words and the meaning and how simple they were,
Yes.
but how philosophical they were. I mean, anytime I feel down, or I just put on a Bob Marley like soundtrack, and I'm just like right back up, you know, and I'm just
Every
like,
little thing gonna be all
yeah,
right.
exactly. I was just like, this country was just blessed with this
Absolutely. Well, the world
this
actually was
the
blessed.
world was blessed.
He's so universal. His
I
message is
remember
so universal.
going to New York City a few months after 9/11, and I knew someone very well who died in 9/11, and I remember going and seeing an entire skyscraper with a picture of Bob Marley.
Really?
Yeah, and I was just like, Jesus, this man
Jesus, not for
is like the symbol of peace and unity in one of the centers of the world, you know, New York City. And for this entire skyscraper to be depicting this man at this time, I was just like, oh my God, like when I was a little boy, I stood 3 or 4 feet away from him, you know, and I was actually, you know, with Chris Blackwell and my parents the night he got shot. So yeah, I was one of the first people to hear the soundtrack Kyle, when,
Kyle,
you know,
wonderful.
so, you know, I really feel like we were blessed with having him and his words, and as time goes on and you get older and you have kids yourself, it's like it means more and more, you know.
Yes.
And
Well,
I-
his message is timeless. I mean, just those 2 words that we resonate with, we associate with him, one love. It's a no-brainer. We are one. And
Yeah.
the more we can consider ourselves as one, the better for everyone.
absolutely.
You strike me as someone who sees a vision, has a vision and an idea, and you don't tend to dwell on the possible downfalls along the way. You just keep focused on the end goal and make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, there are going to be bumps in the road. It's never going to be a straight road, you know. There's curves and bumps, and that's going to happen, and it's life.
Yeah.
And they're going to happen at the strangest times.
Yes.
But then beautiful things are going to happen as well that you didn't think that would, and you just have to have that faith. And I think
Yes.
Jamaica is such a happy country, even though it's so
Yeah.
poor.
Yeah.
And particularly the women, and I don't, you know, a lot of them have this deep faith and belief that I may be poor, but I'm happy, and my children are going to be okay, and life is great.
A trust in
Trust.
the universe, in God, in whatever it is.
Yeah.